Hi, I'm Tim Reed with the Acton News. I'm here with Ken Pfalzgraf as a winner this time. He won the school board seat by
Six.
6 votes.
One,
Very,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
yes, very close election, very close, but it was well fought. Thank you for sitting with me. First question, after a very close race with Miss Amy Frank, is there anything you would do differently if you could go back?
Well, I think that I would not have used all bold letters in my ads because I was told that it was difficult to read, and it gave a subliminal indicator that the writer was aggressive and possibly angry. But short of that, no, Tim. Thank
No.
you.
Okay, so because the election was so close, what do you think tipped it in your favor by 6 votes?
Well, possibly that 6 or 7 people got hung up on the 405 that night in traffic. It was just 2 different campaigns, and I think the community was split between possibly popularity and name recognition, and possibly a look at introducing another line of thought into the board's process. I think that's probably what made it so close.
Okay. So Thursday's meeting, a very large portion of it, was consumed by whether or not we rename Acton School or keep it the same. You had people on one side of the room who are deeply offended on just the thought of changing it. And then on the other half, the opposite. So now that you're a member, how can we reach a middle ground? We can keep our Title I funding while at the same time keeping historical significance.
Okay, so basically there's 2 issues here, Tim, and part of it is emotional. Part of it has to do with established organizations, volunteers, PTO groups. We want to keep those intact. Sometimes we worry that if they're broken apart and fragmented, then there's a new group and funding goes away and there's only so much money to go to those groups and parents to donate. And then there's, well, every time we put up a new school or open up a school, we get that new plaque, and sometimes that's what government's all about. I got my name on another plaque, so I really don't care about that. But the historic significance of Acton School, I think, is really easily addressed, and that is you pick the parts of the school that make it significant historically. That would be the architecture of what used to be the kindergarten and first grade rooms. They're bigger rooms because children transition from being toddlers to students, and they need some bigger room to run around and lay down and stuff. So that's been transferred into offices or whatever. But at least on the outside, you've got an architecture there that's appears to be mid-century modern-ish. So you might pick that and say that's historically significant. What was important to part of the crowd was that it said Acton School, a California distinguished school. That's something that you can give a historic designation to. The bell tower with the old bell that's been brought from another school, one of the original schools. So you separate that out, and you come forward as a staff member and you say, is the board interested in making a resolution that identifies historic elements of Acton School? The board votes and says, we're going to do this. So in the case of the sign, everyone was concerned with the branding of the original school was. By that resolution, what that would mean is if the letters are plywood or wherever they're made out of and they're deteriorating, you would simply have those redone to be period correct, and the historic significance of the building is protected. That can be registered. There's a number of ways to do it to make it formal, but the resolution by the school board would require someone in the future wanting to change that, those specific historic elements, they would have to do that by resolution. So that takes and makes the people that are interested in the community historic aspect, they're well attended to by that. On the other side of the coin, again, the plaque aside, who's president of what or whatever, we don't take and dilute our student body, because if there are certain scores, say there's a class of, one classroom of students that really haven't done really well, due to one thing or another, it can tend in a smaller school population to magnify that the scores are lower. Let's say unfortunately someone gets in trouble. I was in trouble, sometimes I spent my time as student of the month in the principal's office, but if someone is expelled in a very small population, that can make the expulsion rates look huge. And when people are looking to buy homes here and stuff, they're looking at scores, they're looking at numbers. So we don't want to do anything that gives a false data set on what our real issues are. So it's pretty simple to me with the historic designation in place and the thought on how do we maintain our funding, how do we provide services, how do we open up a lunchroom, how do we do this, and how do we do all those things without having to duplicate costs just simply because somebody couldn't give a historic designation to the building. I think that Assistant Superintendent Mrs. Lytle, when she opened discussion, if we watch the tape, she was very clear to make it apparent that there are operational funding and efficiency things that we need to look at. She issued a nice overview of that and handed it out to the public. And I think, again, going back to my thing about putting documents out ahead of the meeting, I think that document in accompanying what was in the newspaper, had that document been made available on the district website, I think a lot of people would have come to the meeting less apprehensive and more ready to work together. So at the end of the day, what I would expect is, if there are people suggesting that the community's not well enough involved, that someone would get together with someone like the Acton Women's Club and the PTO groups would sit together and meet, and then come forward with, this is what makes both of us feel happy. I either like Mr. Pfalzgraf's idea about historic significance, or I don't, or whatever it is, and you come forward and you have a solution that you think will work for both groups. And that takes the groups working together and being outside of their specific interests. And then we can say, okay, first is we resolve to protect historic integrity. That way Acton School is always up there. And then we move to think about the business decisions, and we can make business decisions. So we're separating pleasure from business. And I think that's fairly easy to do. And I think there were some suggestions made in the meeting about doing that over the next couple of weeks. And I'm hoping the community returns with something that makes both happy, and we can make that a two-step process and move through it very quickly.
Okay. There has been a push recently for board members to attend community activities. Do you see yourself being able to attend said activities?
Yeah, let's break that question down a little bit. First, I think this election for one candidate was more about name recognition and popularity and involvement with PTO organizations and things like that, which is great, and we definitely need that. Unfortunately, I'm one of those parents who, because it's just the schedule of the PTO meetings and that type of thing, I'm way at work by 3 hours before those meetings occur. And maybe some diversity in when those meetings occur would help other parents like myself be involved. But that said, we do attend things. I do have a special needs daughter that takes up some of our time, and my focus tends to be more, again, on the systemics of the business of the district. I'm going to put my time into SELPA meetings, special education local plan area meetings. I put a lot of time into going into the charter management organization board meetings of our charter schools. So I do put my time into those activities that are just not always the ones with the balloons and the bells and whistles. And I will continue to do that. It's really important to me that I'm informed about the business of the district. In response to the idea that board members need to be pushed to that, I think our board members, the ones that I've joined, they're not noisy. They don't run off the flag and the bells and whistles again every time they do something. I don't think that's what the job is about. I think they spend a lot of countless hours, hundreds, even thousands of hours in their career on the board, especially the most senior ones, in talking to community members and making sure that they have a good pulse on the business of the district from the look of it, from the voters or their constituents. So I'll be able to attend the ones I can, but again, my focus is going to be making sure I'm informed about our charters, about our special education relationships, and that type of thing.
Okay. Now that you're elected, what's next for you?
Well, I think I laid that out pretty well in my campaign. My focus was first, in the business I'm in, there's good reporting of staff activity, what the policy of the agency is, and that's communicated really well to the public. Here, I think I can do that because one of the confusions I think there is that this idea that nobody's at the board meeting and that there needs to be the use of the music group or the parent-teacher group or something like that to make the board meetings more meaningful. What I do have to say is in my 5 years of attending board meetings, the door's never been closed to me. It's always been open. The microphone at the front has never been held from me. I've been able to stand up at the beginning of the meeting, talk about something that's not on the agenda that's of concern to me, or even during the meeting when dynamic discussions are going on, board members are developing a thought. I've always been able to talk there. So I think the big thing that I can do right now, and first is, and what I intend to do, is push for some simple documents to be released to the public before the meeting. For example, the other day, or the last board meeting, my first board meeting, there was a talk about possibly renaming Acton School. As the meeting developed, it became very clear with the assistant superintendent, Mrs. Lytle, opened the meeting or the discussion on the topic by saying there are some logistical considerations, funding and governing agencies that look over the school, and that could impact if we change the name of or left the name of Acton School. So there was a flyer in the newspaper, which was great, and it prompted attendance, but at the same time, it really didn't say, okay, here's the issues. And if the community comes to the meeting more informed with the information the board is probably going to make its decisions upon and what the staff recommendation is, we don't have to spend 2 hours, trying to figure out that somebody isn't trying to deface the historic aspect of Acton School, and also informed of financially and funding wise and all that, what the good and the bad is. So to summarize that, I'm still going to push for staff reports. I'm looking forward, as at least one of the newspapers reported, our superintendent is out right now. Don't want to get into that too much. We hope that he has a speedy recovery and returns to the district soon, because the charter school roadmap and the building out of the charters, he was the architect of that. He understands it most. Not a lot is known about it because there was some legal things that kept most of the information in closed session. So I'm hoping for his speedy return. I'm hoping we get through the state audit coming in to look at our charter organization, and then we have some legislative and legal validity added to it, and we can move ahead and refine that process. So where I was at in my campaign, it's about the district, the business of the district. It's about making the business of the district brief, transparent, and effective, and supporting our students, parents, teachers, staff, and then ultimately the administrative team that supports them.
Okay, do you have any final statement to make?
What I would like to say is I'm so glad that the community was so involved. I'm glad that Amy and I could work together to bring the voters out so that Hillary and Donald would be well represented in our locality. So as always, thank you, Mr. Tim Reed.